It's difficult to try and put some things into words sometimes, but I'm going to try, okay? Alphonse Louis Constant said that the movement of stones in the road can affect the destiny of a traveller or something along those lines, But what's he talking about there? Now, I've been a big lover of crap movies for a long time. I've seen more crap movies than you could possibly shake a stick at. I've dined out on them. I like them because they're fun. It's the relaxing thing to do at the end of the day. Nice crappy horror movie, nothing wrong with that. But I've been thinking about the structure of how these things seem to be put together and how that seems to map onto the way that some people think about stuff. All right, one of the most recent B movies I watched was called Final Destination. There's a series of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think. And I saw the first one, and it was a traditional crap movie, quite high production value, kind of sort of like late 80s, early 90s kind of style of effects maybe. There was good things about it. It was quite gripping in some places, but it was an archetypal B movie. Okay, it had this part in the story when the characters trying to find out how it could have happened, and they go to a mortuary and they see the guy in charge of the morgue there, who happens to be a creepy guy who seems to be speaking quite authoritatively about the forces of death and how it gets people. And all of a sudden, what that guy had said, what that particular mortician had said, becomes essentially the theological story, the explanation and justification throughout the whole of the rest of the movie. Now, on one side of things, whilst I was watching this, I was thinking, is this actually a cautionary tale about listening to mad people who speak about stuff in an authoritative way? Because, what if, from after that conversation, these people were going to die anyway because they were, I don't know, careless or stupid or just ended up in the wrong place at the right time, and therefore, they met their miserable, gory end? But is there an actual correlation between the theology expressed by the mortician and what actually happens? Now, it's a movie. This is how movies operate. If you go back, way back to the first movie, the Nosferatu, the very first Dracula movie, in black and white, grainy, bad effects. They have a section at the beginning of the movie where you got the Dr. Van Helsing, who's explaining about the Hydra and the fact that the Hydra could possibly be invisible, and therefore it gives some aspects of the science fiction theology, so to speak, for the rest of the movie, talking about drawing a parallel between what he said about the Hydra and what they were saying about Count Dracula and all the vampires and all that kind of stuff. So you have to have these things in these B movies, otherwise the story doesn't make sequential sense, because you're being told about the science fiction reality of the movie. But if you don't think about it like that, right? If you don't think about it like that, all you're seeing is a group of kids who've had some really, really difficult times, and they just seem to have bumped into someone who has an explanation. All right, so they're in trauma, and then they come across this guy. He's got an explanation, and because they're in trauma, they kind of run with it, which says something to me about within that story, it's that time when the kids see that mortician, that's like a stone in the road. Okay, it's bam, boom, oh, something's been explained, and then everything else seems to follow on, agreeing perfectly with that one thing that one guy said. It's not a question of, well, why don't you just go around the city, right, and inquire of all the morticians out there and try and get a balanced opinion as to what could really be going on here. On top of that, why don't you go to a doctor and see a good psychiatrist, and maybe they can actually explain things a bit better for you and show you another way of looking at things. No, there's none of that. It's just a question of they're going to go straight to the mortuary where this one particular person, was killed. They were being stored there in the mortuary. So that's the one place where they go. And hey, presto, the one guy, the one person they decide to ask about all this stuff happens to be someone who's going to talk very convincingly about it. And, it's not like they're saying, well, why do we, find a way of putting this to the test, or why don't we just try and understand it better, and are there any other ways of looking at this stuff? No. It's just a question of that happened, and they ran with it. Now, we're in a world full of lots and lots and lots of movies, right? Lots of TV, lots of videos, lots of this, that, and the other, at much more than at any time in history. And are people, in some cases, picking up a way of thinking from the reality that they see on the screen? Because the reality they see on the screen is not going to challenge their opinions like everyone else that they talk about, okay? And then that way of thinking is then kind of like moving into how they then approach different subjects, including the various weird and wonderful subjects which is often discussed within this channel by myself, okay? And is that maybe therefore why there's so many people thinking a load of rubbish rather than actually looking into stuff into sufficient depth and actually applying a proper scientific methodology when approaching the experimentation with this stuff in order to try and find out what could be useful for human communication, human understanding, and human well-being moving into the future? I don't think we're there yet culturally, and we're certainly not culturally in a place where people are capable of having like objective, intelligent conversations about what has actually happened, what could therefore happen, and then how could we try and create a situation whereby we've excluded like extraneous variables, and therefore we can get the force working properly and efficiently to try and make it more likely we'll get a particular result and effect from that. That's essentially, I think, the next cultural stage we have to go through, and I don't think that we're there yet. I want us as a culture to get there, but we've got some work to do. Okay, as a global society full of strange people, obviously I'm one of the strangest normal people you'll ever see, or one of the most normal strange people you'll ever see, I don't know. But, you know, we could do this bit by bit, and we can remove all the religion from it. We can tell people that, you know, religiosity is a tool, but it's not the actual thing. You know, it's not the thing you need to worry about, because everyone's so concerned about their, you know, their cults, their religions, their traditions, and so on and so forth. They're not really thinking about the fact that they're in, like, nature, and they claim to have experienced some stuff, and that stuff is something we need to find out more about, so we've got to change our language about it so we can actually have a future whereby it's researched objectively. Okay, peace, love, and harmony, and I'll speak to you again soon. God bless.